In another life, I used to work at an aquarium teaching people about sharks. So now is an opportunity for me to use all this shark knowledge that's in my brain, taking up space, to set the record straight on what shark movies get things right and what shark movies get things wrong about actual sharks. What's up, boys and ghouls? I love horror movies, but I also love sharks, and sometimes these two loves are diametrically opposed to one another. When it comes to shark horror movies, they typically have to lie or exaggerate some component of shark behavior or shark anatomy, something like that, just to make for a better and more entertaining movie. And sometimes that's totally fine. You could just check your disbelief at the door and you can just enjoy the movie for what it is. But there's actually some shark movies that get the science of sharks a little bit better than others do. In another life, I used to work at an aquarium teaching people about sharks. So now is an opportunity for me to use all this shark knowledge that's in my brain, taking up space, to set the record straight on what shark movies get things right and what shark movies get things wrong about actual sharks. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment with some of your favorite shark movies, or maybe shark movies that get you the most frustrated. Now, let's dive in. Jaws. Understandably, this is the be-all, end-all of shark horror movies, despite the fact that this movie has been so detrimental to the reputation of sharks in public consciousness. The movie actually gets a lot right about sharks. The things that they get wrong are the size of the shark is exaggerated. They estimate that the shark is around 35 feet, when in reality, great whites are normally around 20 to 22 feet. There are some reports that they can get to be 25, 26, 27 feet, but a lot of those reports are just reports. People didn't actually have a specimen that they were able to accurately measure, and this is just conjecture. There's a part of the movie where we see something puncturing the side of the boat in very quick repetitions. We could assume that this is supposed to be the nose of the shark doing that, and in reality, a shark can't really ram into an object in such quick succession. It would have to hit the object, then swim in a circle to come back. Otherwise, pretty much most of the movie checks out with what people know about sharks back in the 70s and also what we know about sharks right now. Arguably, the thing that best encapsulates the entire outlook on sharks is when Hooper says,
"All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks."
And this is true. Sharks are big and they have sharp teeth, so they can cause pretty severe bodily harm. But really all it wants to do is just swim and eat and make baby sharks. So surprisingly, Jaws is getting 8 shark fins out of 10 on the accuracy scale. The Shallows. In this movie, Blake Lively plays a surfer who goes out into the ocean alone to shred some wicked gnar, or whatever surfers say about surfing, and she ends up with a broken surfboard on a rock not too far off from the shore. Nearby is a giant carcass of a whale that a great white shark seems to be feeding on. And understandably, she doesn't want to swim from the rock back to the shore when there's a great white shark in the water. And part of what makes this movie work both as a horror movie and as a relatively accurate shark horror movie is the fact that, yeah, it's pretty terrifying to think of having to swim from a rock to the beach when you know that there's a great white shark nearby. The thing that this movie gets most accurate is the fact that this shark wants to hang out near this whale carcass. Sharks are opportunistic feeders. They can go days, they can go a week, sometimes even longer than that without eating. They have a very slow metabolism. So if they find a whale carcass, they're going to want to eat as much of that whale carcass as humanly possible because they don't know for sure when they're going to get their next meal. So in The Shallows, that idea of a shark not leaving a specific area, sticking to an area even though the water is relatively shallow, is pretty accurate. There's lots of other things that happen in the movie that are a little less accurate, but the general idea is pretty accurate. So I'm going to give this 7 shark fins. 47 meters down. So this one's a little bit different because this one's about two sisters who go cage diving, and there's a mechanical malfunction and their cage falls 47 meters down to the bottom of the ocean. They only have a limited air supplies, and between their cage and the surface of the water is a whole bunch of sharks. We don't see the sharks do all that much other than swim around, and sort of like the shallows, yeah, it's pretty intimidating to think of making a long swim through water where you know there are sharks. Where this movie really bends the rules of science isn't actually related to the sharks themselves, because we don't see the sharks do all that much, and therefore they don't do much to break what we know about science. Instead, it's about the length of time that they are stuck underwater. When they go diving, their air supply says they have something like 45 minutes to an hour's worth of air, and then they sink to the bottom, and that is the ticking clock of the movie. We know that they only have 45 minutes left. However, when you're 47 meters down, the pressure of the ocean just complicates everything. And in reality, these sisters would have only had about 15 minutes of airtime in their tanks, as opposed to the hour or so that they are shown to have. So that's the biggest error, is just the fact that no, if this really happened, they'd be dead in 15 minutes or would need to escape in 15 minutes. So based on that, just ignoring the shark stuff, this one only gets 4 fins. 47 meters down, uncaged. In this movie, a group of characters are scuba diving. They come across some underground subterranean ruins that they decide to explore, and while they're there, they run into a bunch of sharks. However, these sharks have seemingly been living in these ruins for thousands of years and have evolved to the point that they don't even have eyeballs anymore. So that core idea that sharks could be living in a place without light for thousands of years, have evolved to no longer needing eyeballs, is bonkers. Sharks have been perfect predators for hundreds of millions of years. In the relatively short turnaround of just a few thousand years, they would not evolve in that direction so incredibly drastically. However, I will say that there is a precedent for an evolution like this. If you look at the Mexican blind cave tetra, they've been living in the caves of Mexico for so long that they have essentially become blind, and they no longer have eyeballs as you or I might define them. So there is proof in that concept. In the animal kingdom, there are animals that have lived underground for so long that they adapt to their surroundings. But when it comes to sharks, they are so perfectly evolved, it would take much, much, much longer to ever completely lose their eyeballs. So 47 meters down, uncaged, you only get 2 fins. Deep Blue Sea. In this Rennie Harlan movie, a bunch of researchers are trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's, and the way they do that is by capturing sharks at their underwater facility, extracting DNA from them, trying to use that genetic material to discover cures, and then also test those potential cures on the sharks, and the result is these sharks get super smart. And then when horrible weather causes the underwater station to flood, the sharks escape and start killing everybody. So I understand that this is a very schlocky movie, and I'm not going to analyze how absurd it is about having super smart sharks exploring this underwater facility. But the point that I want to bring up is there's this idea that sharks are impervious to things like cancer, that for whatever reason, they just don't suffer from these terminal illnesses. And that's simply just not true. They can get cancer. The thing is, sharks in the wild, if they get cancer, they're not going to survive all that long. Either they die from the cancer, or other animals determine that they have this weakness and they then kill the shark with cancer. So it's not that sharks can't get cancer, we just don't regularly come across that out in the wild. So yes, Deep Blue Sea is goofy and schlocky and ridiculous. It's very campy, but I do think it spread misinformation about sharks and how they are impervious to terminal illnesses, which just isn't true. So because of that, this is only getting 4 fins out of 10. Wait, actually, I just remembered that in Deep Blue Sea, the sharks really want to kill Michael Rappaport. So if we're talking about scientific accuracy, I guess that means it's a 5 out of 10. Dangerous animals. So this movie is a slightly different spin on the shark horror movie because instead it's actually about a serial killer who takes people out on shark diving tours and then he tortures them and kills them and videotapes it, and he destroys the evidence by feeding his victims to the sharks. So much like The Shallows, this doesn't really try to imply sharks do anything differently than what they would actually do. A shark might not immediately go to kill a person who's dangling in the water. There is at least one scene in which someone is thrashing about in the water and then they're told, hey, don't do that. That attracts sharks because sharks are attracted to injured animals and you're acting like an injured animal. I'm kind of paraphrasing there. But that part is true and the character stops splashing around and the sharks lose interest. I think the movie really only loses points because it tries to convey that sharks are ravenous, bloodthirsty creatures that will eat anything, and they are opportunistic feeders, but in reality, there's typically only about 10 human deaths that are caused directly by sharks every single year. So there's just really not that much data to back up just how often sharks are eating humans. But otherwise, honestly, dangerous animals, you get 8 fins out of 10. Open water. Honestly, I think what makes this movie work is how believable it is that just by simple human error, 2 people who go scuba diving are recorded as having returned to the boat when in reality, they are left out in the ocean and there's no rescue because they are assumed to still be on the boat. After bobbing up and down in the water for quite some time, they eventually get bitten by sharks and die from their injuries. So this is a terrifying concept just at its core, even without sharks being involved. It's just horrifying to think of being stuck out in the ocean with no signs of help. And it does get shark behavior relatively accurate. And the key difference between Open Water and maybe some other shark movies out there is the fact that these people aren't torn apart limb from limb. When a shark thinks something is food, it will give an inquisitive nibble before actually taking a severe bite. However, if you're a shark and you're taking an inquisitive nibble on a human, that's going to cause a pretty severe injury. And one of the characters dies from bleeding out, essentially. So in that respect, Open Water gets things sort of accurate. One thing that kind of sticks out is the fact that sharks don't eat a lot of things that swim vertically or hang out vertically in the water. Sharks typically know what their food looks like. And one of the reasons why people do get injured by sharks is when they are on a surfboard on the surface of the water. And you're a shark that uses ambush to try to eat seals. So sharks see something at the surface of the water that they think looks like a seal. They swim full speed, take a bite, and that's when these injuries happen. Sharks aren't that interested in things that swim vertically. So that's one of the best lines of defense if you are near a shark, is to make sure that you are in the water vertically as opposed to swimming alongside them. Also, the movie concludes with people finding a shark and cutting the shark open and finding a camera that seemingly belonged to the couple who died. And that's another misconception, is that sharks will just literally eat anything and just be garbage cans of the ocean. That's just not that correct. And so because of that, this movie gets 6 fins out of 10. Shark Night. This is one of the only 3D movies on this list. However, it is no longer available in 3D, so it's no longer Shark Night 3D. In Shark Night, a group of friends go back to their lake house for vacation or whatever the hell, and things get scary when they discover that there are sharks in their nearby lake. So even if you feel like you don't know anything about sharks, the idea that there are sharks in a landlocked lake is sort of insane, because sharks typically live in the ocean and the ocean is saltwater, whereas lakes are freshwater. However, this movie does get a point in its favor for specifically saying that there was a bull shark in freshwater. Bull sharks are one of these species of shark that can osmoregulate, which means they can be in the ocean, and if food sources seem depleted, they can travel into deltas and up rivers, and then, yeah, eventually swim into lakes. There was a bull shark that was found in the Mississippi River as far north as Illinois. So yes, there are sharks, bull sharks included, that can osmoregulate to be able to survive in freshwater. Also, there's a point in the movie where they say that there's roughly 350 species of shark. Yeah, that's another accurate piece of information. That some people say there's between 350 to 400. There's not an exact number, but around 350 species of sharks. So hey, if you give an accurate fact about sharks, you're getting a thumbs up. But as the movie gets further along, we realize that there are hammerhead sharks, there's tiger sharks, there's great white sharks. There are sharks that are not capable of osmoregulating, so they would have died. So Shark Night did get points for doing some things that are scientifically accurate, but ultimately the insane idea of tiger sharks and great white sharks being able to just be transported into a lake and have cameras attached to their heads so that people could take the footage and sell it online or whatever the hell they were doing in this movie, that is mostly bananas. So this movie only gets 4 fins. Beast of War. During World War II, a group of soldiers crash in the ocean, and as they're attempting to survive the ordeal and hope to find some rescue, they see that they are surrounded by sharks. Maybe there's one shark, maybe there's more sharks. They don't really know. So this movie is very much inspired by the USS Indianapolis, which many of you might know from the speech that Quint gives in Jaws about a boat that sinks and hundreds of people were killed during this ordeal. So much like The Shallows, Beast of War doesn't really depict sharks as doing things that they wouldn't necessarily do. And add the fact that there's proven history where soldiers were trapped out in the ocean and surrounded by sharks without rescue. Beast of War gets things pretty accurate. So for this movie, I'm giving you 8 fins. The Meg. So this is based on a book series, and it tells the story of how some sort of underwater exploration or who knows what the hell ends up bringing to the surface the prehistoric megalodon that has been surviving at the bottom of the ocean for hundreds of millions of years and just now decides to finally come to the surface. So the parts of the movie that are accurate is there once was a shark known as the megalodon, and this movie relatively accurately shows just how big they were. They were horrifying and they were cool as hell. Where this movie goes wrong is everything after confirming that the Meg was still alive. You have conspiracy theorists out there who somehow think Megalodon actually still lives out there in the depths of the ocean. And while it's true that there's lots of crazy species in the deepest parts of the ocean that people either thought were extinct or grow to sizes that they never thought possible, but there is no proof that any Meg could possibly be alive anywhere out there in the ocean. So because the Meg completely hinges on the fact that the Megalodon could be out there somewhere, you're only getting 1 fin. So that's the science behind 10 popular shark horror movies. If any of you have another shark horror movie you want me to break down or shed some insight on, definitely let me know down in the comments. Also, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel so I can make more videos like this. And I hope you all have fun splashing around in the ocean this summer.